Okay, it's 6 o'clock. It's the planning board meeting for March 31st, it's 6 p.m. I think we'll start off by doing the Pledge of Allegiance, everybody. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's been a year since we've done that. We've been hybrid Zoom all along. God. I'd like to welcome everybody. We have a posted agenda. We have a 6 o'clock informal discussion with the Lapoli Corporation for 550 King Street Common development proposal. We'll start you in a second. I just want to thank everyone for being here and acknowledge that this has been 20 years in the making. We started with a sewer project. It took us 12, 15 years to get the sewer project. We started with form-based coding. We got that a couple of years ago. And last fall, we got the sewer approved, and we got the rezoning of 550 King Street to mixed use. And I think between the planning board, the selectmen, and residents of the town of Littleton, I think it's amazing that we got that much done. And this is this is what benefits from all of that, everybody working together. I just want to say that to start out. And welcome to Littleton. If you want to give us a brief overview of what you're proposing for 550 King Street, that would be great.
Great, yeah, thank you. Good evening. My name is Rick Freiberg from TEC, the civil engineer for the project at 550 King Street. I see a lot of familiar faces, so you're all very familiar with this site, I know, from our process last fall with the rezoning. As you know, this is the former site of IBM. They finished vacating the site in the fall. We've been meeting with the town, obviously, since last summer. Went through a lot of public meetings last summer and into the fall, which culminated in a rezoning of the property, which occurred at town meeting last fall. The rezone was really exciting because it enabled us to convert what had been sort of like an outdated legacy office park into something that's going to be a new, vibrant development that's going to sort of serve the town as an asset for a long time to come. That's how we feel about the site. Some difficulties with the tripod. There we go. Okay. This is obviously our first public hearing about the project specifically. Prior to this, it had been about zoning. So with the zoning in place, we're worked hard behind the scenes with the architects and have a project to bring in front of you. Tonight's meeting is an informal meeting, as you know. We have our first formal meeting next week with the planning board. And I think at that meeting next week, obviously, we'll dive into a lot more details about building specifics, special permit criteria, zoning requirements and the like. But I think for tonight, as part of the informal discussion and to help sort of get the discussion going, we kind of wanted to touch on a few things. One is just to kind of talk a little bit about how we see the process and make sure we're on the same page process-wise as we're just now starting to get into it. Then do some sort of broad strokes of the proposal. So kind of give you a sense of how the design that is in front of you was arrived at, what sort of the important design components were, and how those elements sort of drove the design to what's the package that's in front of you. And then we want to leave a generous amount of time to have sort of an open discussion and a back and forth and a Q&A kind of format at the end of that. So I'll probably try to keep it to about 10 or 15 minutes, make sure we leave a lot of time for Q&A and open discussion if that's okay. Okay, if I dive right in on process? Great.
Knock yourself out.
Okay, great. So again, so this is an informal hearing. Our first planning board hearing, formal hearing in front of the planning board will be next Thursday. That'll begin the master plan special permit process for the project. How we envision the master plan special permit process going is sort of making sure that we have all the right ingredients in the project and that they're roughly in the right places on the site. It's sort of making sure all the puzzle pieces are there and the puzzle pieces, when they're put together, look exactly how we all want them to look. After that, we'll go through that process. We'll have a lot of back and forth, changes to the plans, et cetera, as we incorporate comments. When the board is ready to make a decision on that special permit process, after that, we would go into a site plan review process for each phase of the project. We view this as a phased project. There's about a dozen or so buildings that are proposed. We see this getting built out over the next 5 to 10 years. And so the approach would be, once the master plan is in place, if the board votes favorably for the master plan, each phase prior to construction would come back for a site plan review with the planning board. And at that site plan review, you'd see a lot more of the detailed information that you're used to seeing in your packet. So details on lighting, landscaping, parking, building architecture, signage, all the things, stormwater for those particular development pads. all those things that you're used to seeing on a site plan package, you would see through those site plan reviews. The couple things that would be different than what you usually see is there would also be a letter of consistency that's provided with it. So each phase would have to tie back to the master plan. We'd provide a letter that says, okay, this is what was originally planned on the site in the master plan, here's what's being proposed under this phase, and here's why it's consistent with what the planning board had previously reviewed under the master plan. And then the other thing that would be included in that would be sort of like a tracking form, because we think that, you know, going through the master plan process will identify square footages of retail, square footages of commercial, square footages of office, number of residential units, et cetera. And then, you know, we'll get into phase 2 or 3, and we're gonna need a way to keep track of, okay, you are approved for this, how many have you already built, how many are looking to build in the next phase, and how many are left after that. And this tracking form will just be a really convenient way for everybody to kind of keep track of what's been approved in the master plan, what's already been built, what's being proposed, and then what's left to build in future phases as part of the master plan. So I think from a process standpoint, that's kind of how we see it going. Again, we see this being a 5 to 10 year process as a dozen or so buildings get built out. Next, a little bit about sort of a high-level design that we went through, the process that we went through on the design. You'll see a couple of renderings here, and so as I'm kind of describing the design, hopefully your eyes will kind of go to the 4 different graphics that are here on the easels. But basically, as you remember from the zoning process we set up, the site is now zoned entirely as one zoning district, but there's really 2 distinct subzones as part of the zoning district. There's the front portion of the site, the first 255 feet from King Street, working into the site, and that really very closely follows the form-based code that was already in place, with a few exceptions that were noted in the zoning. The back of the site, which is closer to the highway, is where sort of the larger buildings could live. And the idea there was that the smaller scale buildings would be at the street, and that would help make sure everything sort of stayed as a pedestrian scale on the throughway. As you get further away from King Street, the larger buildings in the back, because of the distance, the scale obviously is less impactful. If you put these same buildings right at the street, they'd feel very tall. When they're set back closer to like where the existing IBM buildings are now, they don't feel quite as big. And then also the smaller buildings in the front serve to screen the larger buildings in the back as well. So it's we think through the zoning effort, it was a thoughtful way to lay out the site. And so when you look at the plans, you'll see the smaller buildings, 2- and 3-story buildings along the front, with the larger multifamily buildings in the back, as well as some GMP manufacturing and office space out back. And again, smaller scale buildings in the front, larger scale buildings in the back. So that sort of drove where the uses occurred on site. And then the next thing was, okay, well, how do we string together all of these different paths, and how do we do it in a way that's safe and efficient and makes sense from an emergency response standpoint, from a vehicular circulation standpoint, and from a pedestrian standpoint. And so the way that we did that was basically by creating this, they're going to feel and look a lot like public streets that go through the development. So the creation of this street network that goes through makes and identifies buildings' front doors. It helps pedestrians identify how do I get into this building through the front door? Where are the main entrances going to be? When people are driving through the site, they'll be able to see addresses on the buildings. They'll have wayfinding signage to be able to get to the right places. It also gives opportunity for streetscape, not only on the site edges, which is sort of most common for most projects where you've got sort of one street that you front on. This gives us the opportunity to bring some of that streetscape inside the site by creating the street network. It also makes everything really well connected. A couple of the other things that drove the layout, obviously you see in the easel furthest over there to the left, is how do we create an open space that's vibrant, that's programmable, so it's capable of hosting different types of events, and then where do we locate something like that on the site, right? And so we thought, okay, well, we really want to connect this site to the downtown. We want to activate that space so it's something that's well used. If we took something like that that's programmable, that's capable of hosting events, and we buried it at the back of the site, because that's what was easiest to do on the layout plan, we'd be missing a huge opportunity, I think, to provide some connection to the downtown. And we'd miss an opportunity to really activate that space for the public. So that green space that you see there is directly located on King Street. And we view that as sort of the gateway into the project for the general public who's walking into the development from the downtown, or for the folks that live on this development site. This is their gateway into the downtown. It's something that'll be very visible to people who drive through on Route 110. So it'll be one of the first things that they see when they enter the town of Littleton. And we think it's a really special opportunity. It's going to give great opportunity for outdoor events and really help to generate that vibrancy that we talked about a lot during the zoning, vibrancy that's important not only for the project to be successful, but also to rejuvenate the downtown and Littleton Common. And so this will be accessible to everybody. It's right up the street, and you're not going to feel like you have to walk through a commercial property to access it. It's going to feel very available, which was an important design consideration. So that's sort of the main aspects that drove the layout. I think from a just overall numbers perspective on the plan, we'll get a lot more into this, I think, next week. But there's about 110,000 square feet of retail and commercial development on the site. There's about 200,000 square foot of office and labs. There's about 120,000 square feet of GMP manufacturing space. And there's 656 residential units. And the residential units that are proposed on site, we listened very closely as we went through the public process last fall. We view sort of a list of different variety of housing stock that's going to be expected out of the project. So we understand, obviously, there's a need for open market rate housing on the site, disposable income, making sure that people who are living here have opportunities to share in the success of the retailers that are going to be here as well and contribute to the success of downtown business owners. There's also a need for senior or age-in-place housing on site. There's a need for deeply affordable senior housing, and there's a need for workforce housing. So those are sort of the housing buckets. We know that the town has a requirement for 10%. We think that through dialogue and discussion, we want to do better than the 10% minimum requirement. And again, that's one of the reasons we're hopeful to be in front of the board. Now that we are further along in the process, we've put together an initial design, and we feel like this is kind of the perfect opportunity to kind of come back to the board with what we're thinking on the site and get your feedback. So I think I'll stop talking right there and begin the discussion phase, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
That's fine with me.
Great.
I'll open up, let the board ask questions. I'll start with you, Anna, since you're the closest. Do you have any questions?
Since I'm the closest, thank you, Mark.
Well, closest to Rick.
So based off the map, you pointed out to the space that will bring the most amount of vibrancy. Where on the map is that located?
Sure. So that's located just to the east of the Tuttle House. So looking at that picture of the Tuttle House, I think that's the left side of the Tuttle House that you're picking up in the photo there.
Mark, you have a, yeah, she's going to pull it up. Hold on.
Give me a minute
If
to
you're not, you can want to move.
Okay, so it's the one that already has the, or that has the crosswalks already.
Yep, correct, exactly right.
Okay.
Yep. So that was the conceptual design before we got the renderers involved.
Okay.
What you see in the foreground of that photo on the left side, you're just picking up the east edge of the Tuttle House. So you're sort of standing at the sidewalk, looking this way,
Okay.
and it's hard to see. But obviously, we picture there sort of being some kind of feature in the center. Here, we're showing sort of like a fountain or something to get some visual interest in the middle. And if you look further back, we see opportunities for sort of like a bandstand setup. So if there's going to be live music or something like that playing on the weekends, and there's great opportunity for that. You'll see over here, there's catenary lighting, opportunities for restaurants to kind of spill over into that space and make it really easy to host events or venues, or music venues, yeah.
So is that what that little tan dot is right there, is the bandstand?
Yep, exactly right, yeah. And I say bandstand, but it could be, an area for food trucks, it could be hot chocolate in the wintertime, it could be, so the idea that this space is sort of multifunctional, it's multi-seasonal, we'll be able to use it, year-round for different events.
Okay. One of the questions that I had, because I like the idea that that is something that the community will be able to get to. So one of the discussion points that we had before was a way to connect to the existing common area. And so is that something that you all can describe a little bit more, or if it's not ready for consumption yet, thinking about it some more? Because being able to still physically get folks, say, on bicycles or walking to that space will be important.
Yeah. So King Street has bike lanes. They just don't connect to anything yet. and so I think this development's a great opportunity to expand on what's there and provide a destination to connect to. The plans that you have in front of you really focus on within the boundaries of the site. But what we'll do for next week is we'll bring some visuals that show what we have in mind for, it's going to be really important to have pedestrian crossings that are easily identified for drivers to understand that they're in a pedestrian area. There's going to be a lot of activity crossing back and forth. Creating that, that connectivity, it's good for the project, it's good for the downtown. It's important that it's safe. We want it to be walkable, so we expect that that'll be required of us. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right.
Anything else?
I have other questions, but why don't we go around Robin?
Bartlett?
Thank you. When I saw this plan, I wondered if it would be, if you would consider having curved streets instead of straight axial streets. This is, I mean, the rectangular buildings and the straight perpendicular streets look like downtown Washington. I mean, the renderings don't look very much like downtown Washington. But I think having curved streets would make it more sort of small-town villagey, which, and this is, you're proposing a village within Littleton as a village. So I would like to see this tweaked to be a little less urban.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. You can see what we tried to do in terms of, obviously when you draw straight streets, the thing you're most nervous about is it's going to be, drag racing. Through a straight shot where it's easy to go fast. So what we've tried to do in some of the renderings is kind of show you our plans for streetscaping and how, the incorporation of angle parking, the incorporation of sort of centralized landscaped medians, pedestrian crossings that are a change of materials, so it really helps to identify those pedestrian
Speed
areas.
bumps?
We call them, believe it or not, speed humps, because they're a little longer than the traditional speed bump that knocks all the stuff in your trunk up and down when you drive over it. But creating those really visible pedestrian crossing areas, and then complementing it with the on-street parking. So you want to have that village feel, but I'm with you on the layout of the streets. I think we could get a little more creative with the curvature of it. And I think, we're at the sort of this master planning stage. Now's the time to get the street network right?
This is the time.
Once the street goes in,
Yeah.
the street's in. So this is the time to do that. So
Right.
that's a great suggestion. Yeah.
So,
That it for now?
well, for now.
Okay. Jeff?
Couple questions. The blue structures, which is the existing, I don't have a key. What is the blue buildings? There's two. There's A and then the existing one.
Mind if I peek?
Yeah.
That one's a tunnel.
So A is an office building, and
Okay.
the one that your finger's on now is the Tuttle House.
So, I mean, the Tuttle House, the roof plan is drawn differently from what it was. So the question is, are you planning on replacing it, or you just want to keep it the way it is?
I think it's, the
Okay.
plan is to keep it the way it is. I
That's
think
fine.
that's just a rendering.
That's fine,
yep,
that's
of the plan,
fine.
yep.
So then, I noticed you have brought the circulation around to the road that goes between Acton Medical and the Acorn. And how is that accomplished? I mean, can we do that?
So Shea Street, I think it's called.
Yeah.
It is a public way.
Okay.
It needs significant improvements.
Oh,
to be
yeah.
a useful public way. It's
Yeah.
very narrow, and there's some stuff located further back on Shea. I think there's some natural gas equipment back there.
Yeah.
So I think our intention would be that we would try to improve Shea
Okay.
from where we make the driveway connection out to Route 110.
Okay.
And
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
but
it just- it
I don't know.
provides-
Yeah. When you're on it, you think, is this anything?
Suitable. Yeah.
Then I'm just responding to it graphically. I'm with Bartlett. Wow, this could, in planning circles these days, you want to be the anti-seaport, and this is a little seaporty. And it may be just offsetting buildings, or, I don't know, these are just lines on a page, so, but I agree with Bartlett.
Yeah, and so when you say that, I just want to make sure we follow you all the way through. Is it the grid-like nature of it that feels seaport?
It's
that
the
it feels like
grid-like
urban block?
nature and the walls of buildings.
And the walls of the buildings, okay.
I personally am disappointed we couldn't keep the IBM building, but, I understand that. And so implicit in this plan is basically you're scraping a lot of soil off this site, because it really rises quite a bit, which is fine. I just want to understand the,
Yeah, I think there'll be, it'll be a significant earthwork undertaking early on. The IBM building, like is kind of perched up.
Yeah.
But the rear of the site, closer to the highway, is lower. And so I think there'll be more of a leveling exercise than an exporting exercise.
okay.
But yeah, there will be.
You're right. I mean, you take from here and put over here, and, the so-called form-based code part, I don't think is quite there. I think that there's, and what I understand is you've sort of put the housing on the end, which is probably appropriate. You put the retail sort of together, which is probably appropriate. But I think there's too much of a feel, I'm looking at and trying to figure out where your renderings, these renderings are excellent. I mean, I understand where that one, we're looking across here. That one, it seems like we're standing here and looking down. This one looks like, are we looking at like Building E, or?
That's along King Street.
Oh, that's along King
Yep,
Street.
looking-
Okay,
yep,
so
looking
it's,
back
yeah.
towards Great Road.
And I haven't really taken a
And
look at
this
that
one
Yeah.
is, this is standing.
Standing at King Street and looking.
At King Street, looking
yeah.
up towards this
Yeah.
roundabout there.
I think that, and from the planning point of view, yes, sidewalk along King Street, but basically the goal would be to bring people in through from the common direction. And I don't know how to verbalize this, but I think that there needs to be there needs to be some more interior circulation or amenity that knits this area together. And frankly, I don't want to say abandoning King Street, but, those people aren't going to be walking up King Street. They just aren't. I mean, I live in this neighborhood. They just aren't. They'll maybe walk your dogs. But they might love to get into here and then wander through, and it could be, better. But this gap is not form-based code, and, so that's what I'm looking at. And what I'm wondering is if, maybe these buildings are, more intentionally two-sided where, there's something going along on this side.
Yeah, and I think it's missing on these renderings, and that's why we tried to bring these as well, just to show you that, and none of them really look at the area that you're talking about in particular, but that there are sidewalk connections that'll go between the buildings. We will.
Yeah, and I understand. I mean, and I would say that to get something like this is startling for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And, but you understand that it gets fleshed out and manipulated and massaged and, but what I see, the main thing about this document, I see that you're creating an interior road system, which is fine. In my mind, I was thinking it would go along here, but I think this is smart in that you make it less of a throughway from here to here. You are segregating the more commercial industrial on this corner, which I think is appropriate, putting the housing here, and then I think this is underbaked. Well, it's all underbaked to some degree, but it shows your intention, and a lot of parking. I'm really curious about these buildings. Are they single-loaded, double-loaded? Will you have apartments looking out over parking, the parking garage? So those are the questions that are yet to be determined.
Sure. And so on the ones that wrap the residential buildings that wrap the garages in most cases I think are 3 levels or so, and the buildings are up to 5. The ones that where the apartments abut the garage directly, it's a single loaded unit. So
Okay.
you walk into sort of like an interior
Yeah.
hallway,
No,
and
that's-
then the windows face outside. Once you get above the level of the garage, then they become double sided.
Yeah,
Double loaded.
I see,
Yeah.
okay. And that's makes sense. I think they've used that that organization in Assembly Square, and it's pretty successful, where, you see a building, but in the middle of the building is a parking garage.
But what do they look down on?
So
If you're facing inwards, are you looking down at cars?
Well, but what we were talking about, single loader, double loader, it may be that what's looking down at the cars is the corridor to access your apartment, not the apartment itself.
Right, but if you're above it, and you look out your window, what do
Yeah.
you see?
So I suppose just like if there was a surface parking lot, you'd be looking down at the parking lot. But including the top deck of the garage though, where you would go in there, it's single loaded. So the first units above the garage are actually like an elevated level above the garage. So nobody will be looking out their unit at the front of a car,
Right.
right? They'll be elevated above. But yeah, to your point, the view on the first level of the double loaded units would be like looking down into a parking lot on the inside. Yeah, I know it's a balance, because we heard really closely about screening the parking. Garages, and so
Is there any way to put like sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, keep going, just,
Well, no, I mean, I think that's, those kind of discussions are coming. I mean, you have to accommodate all this parking. So, it's just we're responding to what's here, and I'm just curious. So, and then, there are the numbers, and, we can get into that, as you said, next week. So. Oh, and then the other thing that I personally would be quite interested in is the phasing. Because we don't want to get, this without this.
Yep.
And so I think that we would be interested in linking, the progression of the project, and totally understand that it's going to be a long build-out, to getting a mix of the building types that were shown here all at once, rather than one thing versus the other.
Completely understandable, yeah.
Okay.
so, speaking of timing then, how do you anticipate the rollout occurring?
Yeah, we'll need to
Like, what would you
prepare,
start with?
we'll need to prepare a phasing plan. So that, obviously, step one, right, is demo the existing buildings and do quite a bit of earthwork on the site. I think the next thing to do would be to build the street network, and that would sort of lay out these pads, if you will. After that, I imagine we would look to build a multifamily building, and then I think we'd take some guidance from you guys on, okay, maybe you'll let us build one of the multifamily buildings, and then you got to build one of the form-based buildings, and then you got to go back and we could have sort of an exercise where we bounce around the phasing like that. But we're all there, because I'm sensitive to what you're mentioning, which is you don't want to wind up where the 4 multifamily buildings have been constructed and the project stops. That's not a position anybody wants to be in. So I see what you're after for the phasing. We'll bring up phasing proposal. I think that's probably the most appropriate way to do it. We'll bring up a proposed phasing plan and a narrative that kind of describes the intent, so that can be entered into the record too, and then we can use that as a basis for discussion about phasing.
Okay.
We got to think about that a little bit. I'm very sensitive to the concern, so we got to think about it a little bit.
So then, back to the buildings, which buildings will be residential? I assume the 2 with the pools in the front, and then what will be commercial?
So, are you looking at one that has letters on it?
Yeah, I'm looking
great.
at that.
Yep, great.
You could maybe flip toward the next one, which shows
The color-coded.
axonometric, which shows a little, the pink.
Yep, pink is the,
Right, yeah, I have that one up there. So the pink is the retail and...
Retail, commercial,
Okay.
yep.
Yep,
Blue is office.
okay.
The darker yellow, the colors are
That's-
so similar. The darker yellow are the more heavy commercial type, so this one is proposed to be office and lab.
Okay.
With a supporting GMP manufacturing building over here. Again, pink is retail, and then this yellow is multifamily.
Okay, that's all the multifamily,
Yep.
okay.
And
gotcha.
then there are units above, out in the front in the form-based
Right.
code section, that you can see the first floor commercial retail components, and then units above.
Right, okay. All right. So, back to what Jeff was saying about this area, I mean, if you think about it, people can't even walk from here to here. To get from here to there, they're gonna have to walk through a big parking lot. So it would be nice to see something,
Yeah, we
somewhere
have to-
breaking it up.
We have to do a better job of showing this, but, having a sidewalk network and crosswalks that are pavers and stuff, that'll help. They're not shown well on, this is
Okay.
more of like a massing diagram.
Right.
But as we develop more and more details, we're gonna start getting a little more into showing these. So there's sidewalks that'll line both sides of these buildings. There's the front door along King Street, and they're gonna be like Jeff was alluding to, the sort of the two-sided buildings. So there'll be another front door, if you will, on the backside, with sidewalks that run across like this. And wherever they cross driveways, we'll intercept them with, pavers and pedestrian crossing, details like that, to make sure people don't have to walk through a parking lot to get from building to building.
Yeah, because my initial impression was like, oh my God, there's so much parking. And
Yeah.
I get you need parking, but
Yeah.
like in the middle there, is there any way to, instead of having people look out on parking, could you put a roof on the parking and have it be like open space, like green space?
We've certainly done that on other projects where it almost gets treated like a roof deck.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
a loungy, kind
Right.
of like outdoor space.
Right.
That's something I think we can look at. Right,
Or
as
it could
part of
even be like partially green and then some areas could be an area where people could sit and grill, or maybe there is a,
Dogs.
Pool. You can hang the pool.
yeah, or
in
some, but I think it's space that could be used, and I think it would be a lot more attractive to people.
Yeah, I think we'll take a look at that, yeah. Yep.
I think that was,
Yeah.
it for the initial.
One other question I had is back in the back of the site where you have you have the bandstand, then you have the sort of boulevard through. What is this? Is this stairs or is it a pergola or?
That's a proposed clubhouse.
Okay.
Yep, so we know that, with this kind of density of residential, there's gonna be an expectation of like a clubhouse, pool area and the like.
So you have tennis and
Yep,
pickleball or half-court
Exactly.
basketball or,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Amenities.
amenities.
Yeah.
And we wanted to have those amenities. We didn't want to have them facing the park. So
Okay.
we thought, kind of tucking them in the back, made it a little more private for the residents. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, did you want to go before I go again?
Sure, let me just real quickly. Phasing. When we did the point, and we did that in phasing. So the way we kind of did it was, obviously, the first thing that went in there was Market Basket. That was the anchor, that was everything, so that would be one building. But we tried to keep the frontage together as we went up, so maybe if you did it that way, the retail component and the building behind it would be, because you're going to have lot lines,
Yeah.
internal lot lines.
Internal lot lines, yep.
So maybe we'll look at if people are concerned about phasing. I think you've heard from us that 110,000 square feet of retail doesn't bother us, that we'd like to see more of it, which, but with that comes parking. And that's, we do need parking to support. We don't have a lot of parking in the common. Obviously, people are gonna use this and wanna park their car once and walk to everything that's gonna be there, and the parking has to be close to the front of the buildings. I personally like the green space. If the board would feel that the building's more of a streetscape, I think that's fine. Generally, I like the square circulation. The rotary at the point is confusing to me sometimes, so I'm old school. I like to drive my car nice and straight. I drive it fast, but I like to drive it nice and straight. But I understand what you're saying. You want more of a rural character to it. I get that. I like the fact that we're going to try to come out and minimize people. Obviously, traffic is going to be an issue, and the more you spread it out away from itself, you've got it on two ends of the project, which I think is a great way to try to dissipate some of the traffic that'll be there. I deal with high rises all the time. The parking garage in the second floor doesn't really bother me. You don't even notice it by the time you live there. I will have a suggestion for you. We have the ability to get a couple of years ago, we had skating rink at the point, and we have the ability to get that skating rink, but we don't have a place to put it. Maybe we put a skating rink out there or something like that for the winter.
Yeah,
So
seasonal activity.
yeah, seasonal activity for that. If you want to try to hide the parking lot, but I don't have a problem with more retail. I don't have a problem with the amount of retail you have there. If you want to put more in and give us more of a streetscape, I'm good with that. I like the open space. I like the idea of keeping it kind of the way it is, keeping the stone walls there and making it walkable and pedestrian friendly, and the fact that you want to have events out there, trucks and things like that, and put the restaurants. Maybe you put more of the retail around that, so there's more of the restaurants are facing the green space.
It helps to activate that space a little bit, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it's first blush, and in a few minutes, once we're done with this, we'll get into how we're moving forward, but I'll open it back up, Anna, if you have some more questions or concerns.
Yeah. So I'm going to use this, because I think it's a really great tool, because it identifies all the different sites and tells you how many square feet and what's supposed to be in it. So I would suggest, given the conversation here about King Street, form-based code, and that gap between B and C, that perhaps building D can go between C and B.
Yeah, pull it forward.
Pull it forward, and then, as everybody has been saying, being able to craft more green space by moving D. And one of the aspects from our existing development up at the Point is that I was sitting up at Tavern one day and watched as a group of young people literally kind of got done with their meal, and they got out and they went around the parking lot, and that's all they could do was go around the parking lot. And so I am grateful that the Point is there, but if we can do something differently here, as you were describing, being able to have that walkway, anything to be able to, again, engage folks in that space as well, so that they stay, gives them an additional area. You know, I'm used to like pocket parks, so maybe it's that kind of idea where there's a little bit of green space, maybe in the middle if that building is moved, if that were to make sense, or maybe something else in the corner, so that folks have different places that if they walk out of a building, where are they going to go?
Yeah.
That allows them to be seated. In that rendering, you have picnic tables. I really like that aspect of it, so that folks can just, you know,
There's a hang.
be there.
Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
You can stay out of trouble, but you have something to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, because it is a very large space, would there be the opportunity to create these little pocket areas?
Almost like
with-
plazas, like little, like Pocket Park Plaza kind of things, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So just an idea, but I definitely appreciate being able to think about King Street as that walkable downtown that Littleton has not had, perhaps it did in yesteryear, and to be able to bring that back, I think would be awesome, because throughout the time, going back to the initiation of the master plan, folks said how much they really liked, is it West Acton, where True West is? Right, because, I mean, it's just one very long block, but everything is up front, it's right there, it feels right, and I think that's what folks had really envisioned for King Street. And by having that many breakups, it doesn't feel quite like what we were envisioning.
I see, yeah. Yeah, I could see how you might get a lot more of that with, like you said, you know, suggesting bringing D to the street there.
Yeah.
Might really help to fill in that street wall. Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
good suggestion.
And likewise, I like that you were saying that pavers would really allow folks to get throughout the development, which is really fabulous. And again, making it as pedestrian and bicycle friendly as possible, even within. I noticed that you do have bike racks outside of buildings, so that will be really helpful. And with respect to what someone else said about being too seaporty, I do know that a lot of what folks said before this went to town meeting in the fall, a lot of folks said, we just don't want it to look like someplace else. We want it to look like Littleton. And I can't say what that should be, but I think that's going to be sort of the big question in people's minds, right? Is this going to be accepted by Littleton? Is, yeah, this, we could do this, we could live with this, right? So I think that the open spaces to be able to bring folks in is a part of that. Let's see. as we move forward, I know we're not there yet, but I heard you say that in the future, we are going to hear about the different types of housing that is going to be at this development site. And I would highly request that in addition to using terms like workforce housing and deeply affordable, that you please include the AMI, even if it's in a parentheses, because that will greatly help us to understand what you mean when you say that.
Yeah, contextualize a little bit, yeah.
Exactly, because the terms might mean something different to you, to him, to me, et cetera. So that will go a long way toward minimizing confusion.
Good idea.
You good?
Yes, thank you.
All right, I just want to touch on the housing because when you first came before us, when we had those informal discussions with members of the select board, a couple of members of the planning board, you heard us talk about the need for senior housing, workforce housing, and deeply discounted, and I'm happy to see that you've retained that. Now, obviously, as we get further along, we'll get more into the details of how to accomplish that and what the AMI is going to be for those and the density and things like that. But I'm glad to see that you started off that way. So I'm happy that you remembered what we all talked about back in those early meetings. As far as what's going on now, next week we're going to start the formal proceedings. So the things that need to be done need to be started right away. Obviously, are traffic and what the front door mitigations are going to look like, because that's going to take you some time. I don't know if you've started it or not, if you've...
We've gotten the traffic counts already. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So we get going with that. We come in next week, you do the formal presentation for the master plan. We're going to have Green, I would assume, have Green Engineering do it, so we're going to ask you for some money at some point to fund Green to start doing their peer review, and we'll do it phased like your phase is going to be, and they'll look at the drainage and the traffic and the infrastructure and things like that. I love your renderings. I really do think it captures especially this one here, captures what we really envision that as we rezoned it, what that was going to look like. The fact that you're keeping the Tuttle House, you're keeping the green space there, that's, I think, the cornerstone of, and the fact that we want you to have more retail, take that and use it how you may, but I think if that's, I think people want to see something nice out there, I think, at the end of the day.
Yep.
The board have anything else? We're obviously...
I'd like you to consider more of the village-type housing. I know it's more expensive to develop, but I know there is a certain type of buyer that might be much more interested in that than this.
Well, what kind of housing?
This housing here, which is more in
with
the
the
form-based
retail.
code
Right.
form rather than the big apartment.
Oh, yeah.
The
Do you have
retail
an
commercial ground
idea
floor.
what you were thinking above the retail space? Even if we give you more retail space?
Yeah, so we had, you know what I'll do, so I don't have to add it up on the spot here? I'll come prepared with that next time. It's in, there's a table on sheet C4, but I'd have to add them up to find out, how many units were planned to be above the retail space.
That was, I think, a deficiency of that table.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite.
It's not calculated or tallied anymore.
Yeah, and we're not narrowing down. And then I had a question to Maren. Are the AMIs changing with the census, or how does that work?
Every year, HUD
Every year?
updates the,
Okay.
but so that's why you talk AMI instead of specific numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, this is my own ignorance, but what does GMP stand for?
It's GMP.
GMP.
Yeah.
So it's a
Manufacturing
practice.
process.
Okay, so this is like a biotech or lab or something like
So
that, yeah.
it's, manufacturing of medicine.
We're
things like
not
that.
making
Or robotics.
Asphalt or something.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's not heavy industrial.
Yeah, okay.
So you just look, Jeff, as what is the next curve going to be in business?
Yeah.
We think that maybe the opportunity for a robotic company to come in.
Yeah.
GMP companies, lab companies, people that are in the life science world. They create, these lab technician jobs and professors and doctors, and just creating and manufacturing, hopefully, the next cure for something. And that's what Massachusetts is known for.
Yes.
And what's happening is in Kendall Square or Seaport or Boston Centric, these really good companies are getting squeezed out for the big companies. And first they filled up on 128, and now 128 is filled up once again by some of the bigger companies. And so these companies that need 20, 30, 40, 50,000 square feet, we feel we present a great opportunity for them, because Route 2 takes you right into MIT or Harvard, where that base is at Kendall Square, only literally 27 miles away, I think. And we just think that's the kind of business to go after.
Sounds good to me, and I'm just, in your phasing, would that be a priority, or do you think, or?
So, you know, we can control, maybe I should let you.
Yeah. Do you want me to go?
Yeah, why don't you?
Yeah, so I suspect what Sal's about to say is a lot of times that development tends to be tenant-driven,
Sure.
tenant-specific. So, you often through brokers are courting these companies that Sal's talking about that are being chased from maybe Kendall Square to come outward. And you're chasing them along with Andover and other communities that are sort of further away from the city. And we have to pursue them, and they all have slightly different requirements. And so it's very hard to build those buildings on spec because the footprints and the requirements for each of the buildings is so different depending on the user. So it could be the first phase. Frankly,
okay.
if the right tenant came to the foreground, it could be the first phase. But it's hard. That specific one is really tough for us to predict. The housing market and the construction of the retail and commercial space, I think we're going to be able to speak really informed about the next time when we talk about phasing. That one is going to be sort of an outlier, though, that might interject itself really at any point during that phasing program.
And would, Building L, which is that office presently?
Building L, yep, so Building L is...
Would that be available for
supporting.
GMP also?
So it's we view that often when you have these GMP facilities. The GMP facilities are sort of usually like high bay space that they can have clean room, lab space, et cetera. What usually accompanies that is more of an office type setup as well, in like a lab style building with maybe 14 or 15 foot floor-to-floor heights. So in our vision, Building M is where the medicine gets made. Building L is where all the scientists work.
Okay, and, the other concern about buildings like those, which is a little bit out of our wheelhouse, is the unbelievable mechanical they have to have. And, they seem like there's giant mechanical systems sitting on a little building, and, that we would want to see those screened and...
Yeah, we've purposely left a large area behind Building M.
Okay.
Because we're with you. Those are, mega mechanicals,
Okay.
yeah. Yep.
Well, it's ironic because...
That's what's there now.
Well, the DCU, the digital building was built as a digital building, like there were at least a dozen in, like a 5-mile radius that are all empty or being torn down, and that was what was being built 40 years ago, and now we're talking about something else, so it's interesting.
Those occupants that inhabit those buildings, they come with a great deal of disposable income
Yes.
also. And we see that as a benefit for the surrounding community and the Point and some of the other.
And let me know, let me say anecdotally, the people who work in those labs in Cambridge live here.
That's right, sir.
I know the director of the Whitehead Institute who lives nearby here, so, I think that's a good thing to go after.
Along those lines, we're talking about shuttle service to the train station, correct? Continued shuttle service, support for the shuttle service, so that, and Maren can probably speak to this a little more, we're dealing with the state about use of the, Governor Baker has decreed that we have to have housing by the train station. We're trying to use part of your project to offset some of the numbers that they're looking for, and obviously it's contingent upon and driven by the fact that there will be a shuttle service back and forth, which is what you would want, because you're gonna want people, if they're gonna work there, to have the opportunity to not have to drive there.
Yeah, it'd be wonderful to have shuttle service, yeah, to the train station. There's LRTA, right, that operates the bus through here now, I think.
There's, LRTA goes to the building, but then it's Crosstown Connect, which is more of a van service, goes to, I'm on the transportation committee now, so I'm trying to get up to speed on this. And they're very interested in this. They're very interested in, you know, the connection to the train station and the existing bus that goes to Lowell. They're interested in electric vehicle accommodations, which would be, you know, definitely easy to do in the
The garages.
parking
yeah.
garages. So, anyway, and, you know, then, people have mentioned it, interior walking areas, and, you know, I used to go over, to take my dog over to the IBM building and walk around, just because it's a place to walk around, you know, so, and a lot of people, and now you're gonna have people living there, so.
I'm excited to hear the conversation turn from traffic counts and traffic numbers to transportation demand management, which means the walking and the biking and the shuttles and, you know, the other, get people out of their cars and around.
You've got to remember, there was over 3,000 cars here in its heyday, so.
I remember.
We're looking at a lot less than that.
That's-
The other thing I want to mention, and that I was glad to hear, and I forget, I'm getting senile, maybe I forgot I already said it, but age-in-place housing. I think that's important, and I like the fact that you heard us when we were talking about age-in-place. There is no age-in-place housing now. If you're truly going to put that on the front, on those front buildings or somewhere in there to give the seniors in town the opportunity to stay in town as their needs change, I think that's fantastic if we can get that to work. So, any other questions or concerns with the Lapoli Company before we see them in a week from now?
I just have one. I was disappointed to see on the sections and the renderings, and to hear you say that you were going to flatten the site. There's some topography there that I would like to see used and have it remain. So that's...
Yeah, I as usual, probably said the wrong thing.
No, you're honest.
What I mean is, where the IBM buildings are really perched up today,
Yeah.
there'll be some leveling of the site, because it has to be
There has to be
travelable,
some.
vehicular,
Right.
but we do like the, actually, I think we found some really old photos through some of our research when it used to be farmland,
Mhm.
and there is sort of a rolling aspect to it. I think we'd like to, see if we can work that into the topography a little bit.
If you could do that, that would be great.
It adds a lot of interest, it lets you know you're not, somewhere out west,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, great. I think that's about it for tonight. I thank you guys for coming, and we'll get more formal into it next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it, yeah. Yeah, so, and just to make sure we're kind of preparing the right way for next week, the information is already submitted to you, obviously, so we can't change that. We can bring the new presentation graphics and the like to help sort of facilitate further discussion. So next week, I was imagining we would talk at the first meeting about the special permit criteria, zoning requirements, but I think also based on tonight, I should bring some ideas about phasing. Just to
Could
kind
you
of
give us a board of that too, so that we
Yep.
could,
Yep.
so even though we have it small ones,
And a
just,
board of the numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, that's what it all comes down to.
We're gonna get to the
Yeah.
numbers, yep, okay. Great.
great. Anything else? No?
Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys giving us the hour.
We'll see you
See you next week.
See you next Thursday.
All right. Have a great night. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Couple of minutes before that.
I saw that Maren passed around the similar presentation that was made for the point, with the renderings.
Yeah.
And let me just point out that the renderings looked a lot better than what we got. Not that we got was bad,
At the point?
at the point. They were a lot more delicious than the point.
Well, I don't know. You gotta remember, we're dealing with a supermarket. How jazzy can
I
you
know,
make a supermarket?
I'm just saying, I'm just
Thank
saying.
you. Do we have anyone here for 7 o'clock? No.
No, they've asked to continue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So now is a good time to talk schedule for next week.
Okay.
They've asked to continue the public hearing till next week. If we do them at 6:10, because the 550 King Street special permit public hearing is advertised for 6:45.
Okay.
So if I put this in between.
Are you guys all good with 6 o'clock, or would you rather
Or start at 6. What time would you like to start?
just check in at 6 good?
I'd prefer a little bit later, like 6:30 even.
Me too.
That 30 minutes is a big,
Can we do
Left.
6, to start at 6:30 then, moving forward next week?
Yes.
Okay.
The only one we'll squeeze a little bit is dirigible. Bruce has 2 places to be.
Okay.
Is dirigible the final,
Just the vote.
yeah, okay.
How long are you giving Lapoli next week? Half hour, 45 minutes?
Well, if we do it right, we can put them last. It's 6:45.
Okay.
And just let that run as long as you need.
That'll be it, okay.
Because there were a couple things that were penciled in for next week that are not going to happen. Because Cooper wasn't ready to talk about the bond reduction. 410 Great Road's not ready for next
Okay.
week. And
All right, good. And the only one that's not gonna be here is Delisa. Okay. And we're meeting, still doing the first Thursday of the month, right? Okay.
So, we're opening the hearing for Lapoli next week?
correct.
Yeah.
I mean, would you consider not opening it, just doing the same thing we did today because of Delisa's absence, or?
She could probably watch it on Zoom.
Okay.
It's advertised, has to be
Okay.
opened.
Okay.
And like, you're gonna get pretty much a rehash of the same thing, and
Okay.
just how it's gonna go, and the fact that we're gonna need to formally asking for money, we're gonna ask for moving forward, like travel, traffic, and get consultants on board and things like that, I would think, so.
Yeah. Green International is reaching out to UTIL to see if they can be part of the review team. They've had experience with form-based code, but also with several larger developments as well.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, that would be good.
So
Okay.
they would be they would subcontract UTIL, or would we contract directly with UTIL?
I would have asked Green if they'd be able to subcontract with them.
Okay, since we
That
already
saves me
have
some
it.
time, but.
Yeah, okay.
But otherwise, I'll reach out to UTIL if that arrangement doesn't work.
Great. All right, well, we have a 7:05 A&R for 46 Hartwell. I don't,
Continue the,
oh, yeah, let's continue. We'll continue the 7 o'clock shared residential driveway for 9 Air Road. We'll continue it to, what time?
so we do, we're starting at 6:30? On April 7th?
6:30 at April 7th, sure. Okay. Can we do the A&R now? Can we? Okay, so we have an A&R before us for 46 Hartwell Ave.
I'll use a cheap easel if that's okay.
Sure.
Good evening, my name is Kevin Conover, I'm from David Ross Associates, and I represent Hartwell Hill Homes. We're proposing a 7-lot A&R on Hartwell Ave. It's kind of a strange kind of configuration, but all the lots conform to the frontage and area requirements for standard lots. They also conform with the lot shape requirements. They also conform with the amount of wetlands on each particular lot. You'll see that they all have frontage on Hartwell Ave, public way. There's no problem with access to the individual lots at this time. You also notice there's a small parcel of land which we're donating to the budding land of the cemetery. And we're seeking planning board approval for the A&R lot as presented.
Does the board have any questions about this? Go ahead, ask.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're always first up as far as I'm concerned, Anna.
Hi.
Hi, Heather.
Good, how are you?
Good.
So, the information said that this contains 9.97 acres. Is that with or without that sliver of parcel A?
That's without that sliver.
Okay.
The original tract of the parcel was a little over 10 acres.
Right. And so, given the fact that with the parcel, it would have been over 10, and that we would have had then the consideration of having an open space development or not, so was this sliver removed just simply to avoid going through that particular process?
I believe it was, yes.
Well, didn't we get a determination from town council that we can't, since it's an A and R and it's not a subdivision, that we can't ask him because from an open state place standpoint, he's by right can do this? We've got that.
But the fact that that sliver, or that parcel A, has not been accepted by the town yet,
Yeah,
that means that technically it is still part of the property while
Right.
this application is,
but because he's doing an A and R and not a subdivision, we can't ask him for an open space plan. It's not part of subdivision control. Because he has it by right, we can't ask him, right?
I would suggest that the board could ask and could push, but if it were to go to court, then it probably wouldn't win.
Right.
I don't know where the bar is.
Well, I can explain it too, is we have a notation on our plan that that parcel is not a building lot. So right there, it's not inclusive in any of the building portion of the property. And I agree with Mark, this isn't a subdivision. Defined by Mass General Bylaws, Section 81L, that defines what a subdivision is. This is strictly an A&R, which is 81P in the Mass General Bylaws. So again, since it's not a subdivision, under the term subdivision, this is just a straight A&R that has frontage and area requirements with a lot shown.
so from the standpoint of the optics of this, it's very unsettling and uncomfortable that this is what would happen so that somebody can avoid Littleton's bylaws. And so from that standpoint, I could see if an entire other piece or parcel were to be donated to the town, but this just is inappropriate, so I'm uncomfortable with it.
Okay.
And so.
Would you feel more comfortable if they gave more land to the cemetery commission rather than a little sliver?
Well, since it appears purely obvious that this is something that folks don't have any concerns with other than me, then yeah, absolutely. Because right now, what was done here was, let's take away a little bit of land, let's just give a little bit so that then we don't have to deal with the town's bylaws and do more and have greater, and take that responsibility that comes with the property that's owned there.
I understand what you're saying, but we asked town council, and town council told us we have no right to make them do an open space subdivision because it's not a subdivision, okay? It's an A and R, okay? I agree with you that it skirts the law, and to be perfectly honest, I was sort of hoping we'd get a little more land with it than the little sliver that just skirts the law.
I certainly
So
think.
maybe we could get a bigger piece to give to the cemetery commission, because it's going to the cemetery commission, to make it appear, so it doesn't appear like they did it. I hear what you're saying, just in spite of that, so,
I technically agree with town council as well. Like Mark says, this is not a subdivision under the definition of a subdivision control law. This is an A&R plan. I have the definitions of the bylaws
No.
if you want to read them, but Mark's exactly right.
I read them. So
You
the,
read Mass General Bylaws?
I read what town council offered to us,
Okay.
yes.
And then since this is not a subdivision, under the term subdivision, this is an A&R.
so could we just make it a little bigger just to keep everybody happy? And it's land that you're never gonna use up in the back there, it butts up to the cemetery.
Well, then again, what's your definition of a little bigger? I mean, there was great strains to go to do the calculations with the lot shape requirement.
We'll give you the waiver for the odd-shaped lot calculation and stuff if you gave us an acre.
Through what? The zoning board of appeals?
No.
Or through the planning board?
If we have to give it to the ZBA, otherwise we'll let you donate it after the fact, after we sign it or something. We can figure a way to do that. I agree with Anna that we should do a little better than just to skirt the law.
That-
I agree totally that we have no right to do it.
Right.
And the rear of Lot 4 is completely inaccessible from the front.
Right, so how does it have frontage then?
It's got frontage right
No, it
there.
has frontage, no, it's a hammerhead lot,
Yeah,
but I'm just
You can
saying,
Build right here.
yeah, no, I know, but I'm saying the part beyond the pond,
Yeah.
you can canoe through the pond to access your parcel.
So maybe give us a good chunk of Lot 4 to, just,
I know what you're saying, and again, there's a mechanism to do it, whether it's straight through the ZBA or the planning board. I'd rather not go to ZBA just
Yeah.
for timeframes. And then what's the definition of a little more?
Well, how much do you need for the hammerhead lot?
80,000 square feet.
what do you have for Lot 4?
And you have almost.
Just under 2 acres. So
How
So you
about,
don't have, you really don't have
we
much
don't
more to
have
do.
much to wiggle
Yeah.
room. And again, the lot shape and the access strips, the wetlands, I mean, you go through all these variables that are in the zoning bylaw. Our first schematic was to donate basically a 50-foot strip around that back piece. And unfortunately, the mathematics of the zoning bylaw prohibited us from doing that. This was a difficult calculation to get full conformance with all those bylaws. And the interesting part is, we have enough frontage for 7 lots.
Mhm.
It's just that the configuration is strange, and that parcel is strange.
Is there any possibility or value in a use easement? I mean, for that back portion, keeping the lot lines the way they are and,
We wouldn't mind doing some type of buffer, like a 50-foot buffer and an easement of some sort. But the contents of the lots have to remain the same.
no, I realize
Right.
that.
So
well,
that-
once we've approved it, we could come up with a way to do it. Why don't we,
Absolutely. Now, again, would that buffer easement be for the cemetery?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
I
okay.
mean, they're the only,
they're the
butter
only ones
that-
there, that's,
yeah.
and it's not like they're ever gonna use it,
Correct.
it just makes sense that, okay.
So, yeah, I don't think we have a problem with doing that.
But I want to understand this, so without the sliver, then it hits a certain square
Threshold.
footage. But, okay, which, yes, I mean, there's an appearance problem, there's no doubt. But the fact that it's an A and R and not a subdivision, and they're not, and I thought the other aspect of Chris Heap's letter was about inclusionary zoning, how, because it's an A and R, it's also not subject to
Subject to
inclusionary
that.
zoning. So we would have to go to town meeting and get a bylaw change to,
Right.
to do this. I mean, I agree with you, Anna, it's a appearance thing, but it's also just the way things are. I mean, we've had issues, we had a previous A&R where we extracted some money for affordable housing, even though strictly speaking, there was no, Guthrie's
The
deal.
Guthrie's, yeah.
And in this case, we may extract a open space easement or something like that, but
I
that's
agree
the
that it
best
should have
we
been a
can do.
bigger piece. I agree with that part of it. It would have looked better, but, so let's figure a way to get that.
And honestly, to me, unfortunately, it could be a better layout through a special permit process, open space special permit process, but that's not the application that you have in front of you.
No. So,
And then I have a follow-up question. So I heard you say 7 lots, but our note says it's for 6 new lots. So you're not counting the existing
existing,
house
correct,
lot.
right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and that was not from them, that's my way of signaling
Okay,
it.
got it.
can we come up with, we're meeting again next week, so we could take care of this next week.
Well, and again, if it's just an open space, it's an easement, that doesn't have to go to planning board, because we're not creating any new property lines. So we could approve this tonight under the auspice that we'll come back with conversation about the location of a buffer easement or buffer zone, or some kind of use easement, we'll do something like that. And again, since it's not,
In my feeling, it should be that entire
For lot 4?
disconnected piece. you know.
Like that area there?
Yeah, it's
You
useless to,
You can't get
I'm
to
just
it.
saying, it's a hill like this.
Yeah, so.
I know, but-
So give us a
Yeah.
use easement
But-
for it.
No, it's fine.
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That's
we'll do-
even a better.
We'll do that.
Is that where
Is
the
that
old
okay?
ski, you know, the ski thing was, or?
No, it's just behind the pond.
Are you okay if they
And
get
are
us?
you gonna put a covenant that every house has to have masonry fireplaces?
I am.
Okay.
So since you're being charitable, we have one other request.
Oh,
And it doesn't have anything to do with
you want
you.
to approve it first?
We'll approve it subject to this. This one might be a little bit. Moore Lane, the strip at Moore Lane that the residents don't have, can you give that to them
I
finally?
tried to.
Can we figure a way to give it to them?
Write it up, I'll sign it.
Okay. Because they all should have that frontage. you know,
No, they
just-
should.
Okay.
I tried to give it before, but
All right.
just nothing happened again.
We'll work with town council, we'll get it done.
Okay,
Okay?
yeah.
You know what we're talking about?
No, I don't.
Back in the old days when we had wagons and I used to live here, Moore Lane was built, and unfortunately, when it was recorded, they only recorded 25 feet of it, not the 50 feet. So all the residents there technically thought they had the 50 feet, but they only have the 25 feet.
What do you mean, the 50 feet at the road?
The roadway.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So we want to give the residents all their frontage, because technically it's not there, or they don't have it. So it's been an issue for, I don't know, 10, 15, I don't know, 30 years I've been here, I don't know, it's been a while.
Since 73.
Yeah, so we should figure out a way to give it to give them what their frontage is.
Oh, coming up on 50 years. Wow.
Yeah,
That might
something
be
like that. So we can work on that too.
Yeah,
Are you okay with this if they donate the land in 4?
Yeah, that would be very helpful, and then I would recommend that the board work on fixing this loophole at a future.
Oh, okay. Okay, we can do that. So I'll
Yeah,
entertain.
we can certainly, I'm sorry, we can certainly fix the inclusionary housing loophole, but requiring a special permit when somebody comes within an A and R, that's,
That's the state.
that's.
We can ask Chris, but I don't think we're gonna
If there
get
is a
where.
mechanism to do that.
So we'll ask.
Right. I guess the term subdivision is kind of confusing sometimes, where a subdivision actually creates new road frontage. It's a definitive subdivision, we have to go through that approval. This is technically a subdivision, but it's an A&R lot because it's not a subdivision. We're creating new lots. I have the definitions, I'll leave it for you, they are confusing, but again, the whole purpose of an A&R plan is you're signing it stating that it is not a subdivision, because all the lots have frontage on a public way.
And we have problems with not having any control over these, what look to us like subdivisions but aren't, you know,
Yeah.
so.
Well, like I said, that's the term, that, you know, approval not required is even a kind of ridiculous term, because really approval is required, or endorsement is required. But it's the whole subdivision. I'll leave them with you, it's under the definition section of Mass General Bylaw, how they define a subdivision. And this is not a subdivision.
On the merits of the subdivision, do we have any other issues? The square, the reduced frontage lots all have their squares, they have plenty of frontage. There's no illusionary frontage here, they're all right on the street right there. So, no, it's,
Like lot number 4 really is, I mean.
well, no, the front of it, they can absolutely access it right there.
Right, that's the area that.
So
Yeah, that's where the square is too.
with this layout, you don't need to have any easements. Each one of those strips is going to contain a driveway. You don't have to have an easement under somebody.
We're
else's
working,
property.
we're working toward maybe doing a common driveway on this property
Part
as
of it,
well.
okay.
Right, and that's coming down. This is the first step, like you saw before. So we'll be in front of the Board of Health with septic system designs. Special permit, I believe, is for a common driveway, so we'll be back in front of different boards in the town. And any work within the buffer zone too will be in front of conservation as well.
Okay. Anything else? Someone want to make a motion that we approve the 7-lot subdivision for Littleton Hartwell Hill Homes?
The A and R?
A&R? Sign it?
I so move.
Second.
Okay?
I'll second it.
We got it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Want to abstain? Yeah, okay,
Very
good.
quiet. Aye.
All right. Do we have Mylars to sign? Look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. We'll get back to you about Moore Lane, seriously. Give Chris something to do.
Everybody on the left side of Moore Lane has to drive across 25 feet of somebody else's
But,
property.
yeah,
at the
but they
end
don't
of their
really know that
driveway.
they own.
It's completely nuts.
It's back in the days when things were signed on Phil Russell's kitchen table, that's why that happened.
So how exactly is that additional property that you just talked about going to be accounted for?
Each resident's gonna get an A&R for that piece
Their
of property.
taxes will go up.
Yeah, well, it won't go, but it's been an issue on
There
some
will be
people because people selling their houses technically don't have any frontage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right,
it's happened.
because the end of their driveway is on his
Yeah.
So my
property.
point is, though, typically we have some sort of decision that's going to be made, so is that going to be made somewhere?
Yeah, we'll have,
You don't have that opportunity on, I can write it down,
Yes.
but yes, yes, we'll write it down. Not
just one.
enforceable, but
So it's not enforceable?
it's an A&R decision, either it meets and you sign it, or it doesn't meet. And
What do you mean, as far as the frontage? I mean,
let's do the other one.
Which one are we talking about?
So I'm
This?
talking about the additional discussions that we had here about the property for Moore Lane and the additional off of Lot 4. So how is that?
You're gonna come in with an easement plan for this one,
Okay,
for that one, okay? And Moore Lane is a separate issue. Town council's gonna have to deal with that one.
okay, all right, that's
Does
what I
Anna
wanted
get to
to know.
sign this?
Yeah, she gets to sign it.
Right. I don't know where.
Thank you. There's only 4 signature lines.
You have to cross Mark's
Cross mine
or
off, you can sign.
Kind of
You
weird.
could sign to the right of it. If you want to just sign in it, it's fine.
They didn't pay enough to get 5 lines? Oh, all right.
That's extra.
All right. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Did you get this?
You're gonna send Maren a copy?
Absolutely.
Thank
Aaron
you.
gets the pen.
I don't think we put a date on it, so you'll add that.
Yeah, it's today's date.
Thank you. Okay, so that's it for the night, so now we just have board business, planning and board goals, all right? King Street Common, zoning,
Done.
done. Permitting for 550 King Street, moving forward with that. Any questions or concerns about it amongst us? So, first thing is traffic, that's first and foremost. We'll get the traffic consultant going, we'll get money from them for green. What do you think, 50 grand?
Green was going to do a cost estimate after our discussion tonight. And
Okay,
now it's a little more clear, the
okay,
information that we'll be getting that we'll need a review for, and they're going to do it, a menu, and we'll decide which pieces they need to do
Are they,
now and which ones they would do later.
are they allowed to look back at previous traffic studies?
yeah, they
Yeah.
can look back at all of
Okay,
it, yeah.
because, you know, that could mitigate concerns about traffic.
So, one other issue that's gonna come up, and they'll probably bring it up next week, is timing of this. They would like, obviously with everything going on, probably 2 meetings, but Maren brought up a good point, so it's gonna be tough to get stuff back and forth every 2 weeks, so Maren suggested that we do 1-hour meetings with them, get all the information that we need to get to them, so that the next month, they've responded back or agreed us, so that we can keep it moving and not have to do every 2 weeks. What do you guys think about that?
I don't, why would we need to do every 2 weeks?
They want to get going on it. Once we start getting into it and we have questions, they want to come right back with the answers so they can keep going, especially with the master plan. And I'm pretty sure that it probably has to do with the fact that, we're talking state funding and money for all of that. I think they want to get that all resolved.
So my concern with the 2-week thing is that what happens is that they'll be submitting stuff the day of the meeting,
But
which.
that's why I think we want to still stay at 1, but stay longer for it. We're around at 7:30 now.
Yeah, I just think that we need time to look at things.
And
And
so
not get them
agree.
that afternoon when you may not check your
Right.
email and, you know.
That's why I
so-
think we'll schedule longer times for them, but once a month. We'll keep it at
Okay,
that.
that's fine.
everybody good with that? We'll at least start out that way, see how it goes.
Repeat it one more time. What's the plan that you're
They
proposing?
want to do every 2 weeks.
Right.
I don't, Mara and I agree, we don't think 2 weeks, they're not going to get enough done in 2 weeks. Let's do once a month, but we'll do an intense meeting with them. If we have to meet for an hour, hour and a half, we're busy, but we're not that busy. We're done at 7:30 now. So if we have to dedicate an hour to Lapoli,
Yeah,
once a month, let's do it that way, try to get done as quickly as possible from
Right.
that standpoint. So that way, because that way, it gives us the whole month to get all whatever questions we have resolved. I think it'd be better that way. Okay, that was that one. What else was I gonna talk about? I think that was it. Other than that, I think it went well. I'm happy that there was nobody else here, but we'll see now. We start the real thing next week. We'll see how that goes. TDR.
Yeah, we're going to try to continue to schedule meetings. It's getting a little tough because schedules are getting tight, but plowing forward with it.
Okay. Littleton Station. I have spoken with the Longs about,
hold on.
go ahead.
I'm on the TDR group. That, to me, looks like the TDR programs really depend on the underlying zoning. You have to have zoning that is restrictive enough that the developers are going to want to increase the density
To buy into it.
to buy into it. Without low-density zoning, you're not going to create a market for developers to buy transfer rights. So that's what I see as we can't, it's not going to be possible really to have development rights transfer into the train station area because that's already, for Littleton standards, an insanely high density. But, places that have, one house per 5 acres, they have no problem selling development rights because near town, people want to build more. So that's something that this board and town meeting have to work on, that kind of limit where TDR can go from here.
And that begs the question, the only other thing that has any kind of density is senior housing. And do we really even want to go that route again? Because we haven't had a lot of good luck with the senior housing bylaw. We're hoping this is going to give us a better shot at some seriously affordable senior housing, so. I don't know of any other zoning issue that we do that.
Well, I thought it was TDR was going to be in balance with the form-based code, or the village common overlay district, where there is a restriction on, density. And we've been sort of sidetracked with these giant developments that have been proposed. But I see your point about the train station area. And once again, our hands are tied because we have to designate, some area. But I don't know, I still think there might be value, even if it, if we had it, we could have probably gotten something from Lapoli. And, I just,
So is it maybe just too late?
I don't know if it's too late, but I think we have to be proactive, and it's like with the form-based code thing. There wasn't any specific proposal when you guys started that, but yet it has influenced a lot of proposals since. So the very fact of TDR might influence thinking.
What about the concept, remember when conservation came before us and it was, they were talking about getting funds for the TDR so that it would stay as open space, but they could get the funding, where we take the town out of the equation about you can't get another building lot, but conservation buys the rights to build it, and then you get the best of both worlds. You get open space, you get it staying in natural, and you know what I'm, it's actually there, it's a building a conservation restriction on the property.
Right.
And if they were talking about that they have the access of getting funds to do that, maybe we should shift more of the TDR back to conservation. Because we don't care that it, we want to see it left in its natural state, if at all possible.
Right.
The fact that we're giving developer over here 3 more house lots, so we could save 3 house lots over here. It'd be better if we could save the 3 house lots here that never got built, and maybe we look at TDR from that standpoint, trying to get funding, and they,
You've lost me, because I don't understand where the money comes from. If,
remember when we had, I'm gonna lose it, was on the planning board with me,
Don?
Don McIver, thank you. Don said that there was state money available for TDR to buy the development rights and keep it as open space. Maybe that's the way we should go more from a town standpoint, because we haven't been successful with using a developer as the money source. We use the state as a money source and see if there's money we can get so that
well, then it's not a TDR, it's just a simple
it's a conservation
restriction
restriction, yeah,
program.
but it's not.
It's not, hasn't anything with
The problem with the
to do with
TDR
zoning.
is, as Bartlett put it, nobody really wants to buy it. There's no place,
Well, we don't know that yet.
well,
We don't know yet. I mean, I think that the mill building may get
That's a good point.
torn down and developed into something. That's a business, of some kind of a business district. So he's, if we leave it business, he's gonna have to buy rights to put housing there.
410 Great Road, the mill building, is in the Village Common District,
So that's.
form-based code.
That's, okay, so,
So
And he's gonna be here
mixed
next
use and
week, by the
residential,
way.
well, he's
I don't
not
know
ready
that.
for next week.
No.
He's trying to develop some plans. to-
yeah, he's kind
to
of
bring
come
them
up with
forward.
plans, but he's tried to meet with Martin and I, and we've told him that he really should come to, talk to the full board about what his proposal is, so. You guys will hear it next Thursday.
In another month, when he's ready. He's
Is
not
he?
ready for next week.
Oh, he's not gonna come next week? Why isn't he ready? Okay, well, whatever. Okay, so, are you good for now?
yep. I just wanted to say that, zoning.
No, I think that's a good point,
Underlying.
but I guess I would say, press on regardless.
Oh, yeah, I intend to follow up on it, but there's a lot of interesting models out there.
Okay.
Yeah, look, it took us 20 years to get the sewer, and we got it, so, and hell. Anyway, so, Littleton Station, I've spoken with the Longs about trying to get us a plan sometime as we move forward through the summer, because obviously by the fall, they're gonna wanna know what's going on, and we're gonna wanna know through the state. So they're okay with that.
Yeah, and I would imagine the town's next step will be based on when DHCD provides final recommendations. The draft recommendations are the one that's caused all the discussion lately with the
Right.
size of the district and everything. so.
Yeah, so they are obviously still interested, still engaged, and they'd like eventually, probably sometime this summer, to start coming before us with at least an idea of where we're going with the train station and with the state.
So I was always disappointed with the previous planning on that because it completely glossed over the parking for the train station. I mean, there was no representation of it whatsoever. And that to me is crazy.
I don't think so. I thought that we, I thought
No, there was, in
No,
the drawing, the pretty sketches they had, there was no parking lots.
we
There
had
was
talked about
no.
100 spaces. Yeah, we did.
Well, it wasn't graphically represented, and that makes a big difference.
No, we had talked
And-
about 100 spaces for town residents,
Okay,
yeah.
and where does the, so I don't know, I think since I'm
Well,
on
if it
this
wasn't
transportation committee, I'm sort of focused on,
If it's not, wasn't there, it's Delisa's fault.
Yep. My
no, I
No,
think
no,
it was
we-
the planner's fault.
No, we had talked about 100 spaces, we did. That was, I
You
don't
may have
know,
talked about it, but
I-
it didn't show up
I
in
don't know if
any
you're
of the
looking at the ones
documents.
that Judy Barrett did. Or the
Yes.
ones that- Yeah, okay, so they did another set of plans themselves, and we saw them. We saw
Okay.
a rough idea of what
Okay.
they wanted, and I'm pretty sure the 100, matter of fact, I know the 100 spaces.
It
were in
definitely
there.
was.
Yeah, Judy Barrett's didn't have it, you're right. So we're still moving ahead with that, and I asked them to give us a scaled-down version of what they might be considering based on what's going on with the, I'm trying to talk them into less apartments, and I think we're gonna have enough apartments and smaller duplexes, some senior housing, stuff like that, and I don't know if they listen or not, but maybe they'll come in with something that shows less density, but little duplexes or something, but we'll see. So that's that. Board members' input, what do you guys want to talk about? You got anything?
Yeah, CPC met last week, and so we contingently accepted an application for $20,000 to undertake a feasibility study for a new tennis and pickleball court area to replace these right here on Shattuck Street. It presumes that the town moves forward with its plan to build a senior center over there. So the study would consider and recommend a site for new courts. So,
What about the field in front of Cooper? That's recreational. Why don't we think about putting stuff there? It's too small for lacrosse, it's too small for
Soccer.
soccer and everything else, but it's,
Intended for.
which is what it was intended for, but their septic system is obviously encroached in on it to the tune of about 3/4 of an acre to an acre. What
well,
about,
the 20,000 is just a portion of the overall cost for this study that's going to be conducted, and there will be various sites around town that will be assessed, and I think that's one of them, right, Bartlett?
It is.
there is money available for there's 200,000 that the water department is holding for recreational, just FYI.
Yeah, we heard about that too, and that hasn't come to fruition yet in front of the CPC.
Oh. They didn't give, I thought there was talk about giving it to the CPC, so they
There
could.
There was talk, but it just hasn't, we haven't seen the check yet.
You have to talk to the water department there.
Well, we need to
Jimmy
see an
Cat.
application first, Bartlett.
Anyway.
I'll be happy to take the check.
What about you? Do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, just TDR was supposed to meet and it didn't because I haven't done my homework. And
Yeah, that's a
Matt
tough
hasn't
one.
done his homework. But, we have sending areas. I don't know what the receiving areas are, and I don't know how that's going to work, so.
Can you put your Affordable Housing Trust hat on for a sec? Where are we at with Anna being on the Affordable Housing Trust Board? Are we still in limbo with that one? Do you still have to go to the select board and get nominated or something?
Apparently, but I haven't heard anything, so I think that particular topic's not on their top 100.
Can we push that along, or should,
I can ask, but
yeah, because if that's the only thing holding it up, because,
Yeah, just the appointment is all that's holding up. There is a vacancy.
Yeah.
Millie's not on it.
yeah, so why don't you, see if we can,
We need another member.
yes, definitely. See?
Yep,
I
happy to
took the
ask.
whole thing in.
You've got everything. That's why you're chair.
What about, Jeff, do you have anything?
Transportation Committee met and they're doing Zoom and it was, it was just it's sort of the purpose of the committee is just to just sort of gather all the transportation issues and which are they're from foot trails to paving on roads that take giant trucks, so, anyway, in my basic role is to say, this is what's before the planning board, this is what you should be, focus, you should pay attention to, they're all interested in 550 King, and, so that's it.
Speaking of that, we're going to actually ask the Lapoli Company to make sure that they're an active participant in funding the transit system in the town of Littleton.
Yeah, I noticed they weren't,
I sort of, but I didn't.
we sort of, that would be great to have that.
This was not the meeting
Yeah,
to
okay.
strong arm them for funding for
Yeah.
that, but yeah, we will be.
As I understand it, who paid for the Crosstown Connect, the van?
well, that
Was that IBM or the owner, or,
there was participation from several communities, including Littleton,
okay.
the support for Crosstown Connect, and then there
The
was a
Crosstown Connect was
couple dollar
just
fee for.
was that just the van, the connection from 550 King to the train station?
If I recall correctly, that's right.
Yeah.
But the other thing that Crosstown Connect does is they partner with local businesses to get employees things like van service and guaranteed ride home if you carpool
Yeah.
and things like that.
Okay.
They just, and they yeah. They have a whole menu of different services
So,
they do.
well, it's nicely suggest that they look into ways.
Whether
to-
it's that particular company or a different
Somebody
one.
else, but we
Right.
need.
Now,
support.
is that just available to those company employees, or like, could anyone show up at whatever designated spot there is on that site and take the van to the train station?
Part of the discussion is there enough funding to do a regular route? And so, yes, it would be a public.
Hopefully tied in with the train schedule. Yeah.
Exactly.
But then that begs the question of parking too. So maybe we try to
Well,
get some parking for that too.
It should
Well, there
cut down on
should
the
be a
parking.
spot, and
Right.
it was mentioned that Cornerstone, up in Westford, has like a little bus shelter, where
Mm-hmm.
it stops. And can we have that? I mean, I'm sure they could.
I'm sure we can get to
yeah.
that, but the question is, supposing you can't get parking down at the train station, you wanna park
Mm.
up there and take the shuttle down. We need to work on maybe
Okay,
some,
yeah, so what else have we done for parking? When they do the multi-use trail along Foster Street, there's gonna be a spur of that going over to the lower office building that's got all the fields of parking
Yeah,
that nobody
that nobody
uses.
uses,
Give
yeah.
him, that owner, the opportunity to lease more, spaces there. And then we added the 30 spaces at Amazon, that it'll be a
And how
while
is that
before.
working? How do you get from those spaces to?
Right now, the Foster Street station isn't full, so there's no need to.
There's no need.
where they walk.
But at the time of, if it does become full again, how would it work?
We anticipate that Amazon would be participating in Crosstown Connect or something
Okay.
like that, and that would,
So
could
Crosstown
be
Connect
part
would-
of the
okay.
loop.
Okay.
There's a lot of, obviously, a lot of moving pieces there, and none
Yeah.
of them have come together yet.
And then there's the regional bus system that the end of the road is 550 King, and then it goes up to Lowell.
Right, LRTA, right.
And that's what has the bus stop in Cornerstone, I think.
You got anything? You
Nope.
good? Nope, just traveling and living large?
Yep.
Everybody knows the first marijuana facility opened up?
I saw the sign.
So it's, I think they need a light at the end, but other than that, they're open, the place looked nice, I went in just to see what it looked like,
You didn't buy
Anything nice,
anything, no, right?
No, I just went to look, look but don't touch, no. No, it was very well run,
Yep.
very professional, yeah, so that was good. Marion, you got anything else for us?
I did post the minutes of March 3rd, but I just did that yesterday, so not sure if anybody had a chance to look at them. Budget process, so there is a spending freeze in place as of April 1st. We have some unusual, it's all to do with utility costs. 3 different things have hit that, hitting that budget, and so there's only a certain amount the town can spend before we get to the end of the fiscal year. But it's office supplies and things like that, and so
I noticed you don't give us pads of paper and pencils anymore,
there you go.
cut back.
So if there's anything urgent that we need before the end of the year, we just need to do a request.
Okay.
If you need some reams of paper, I could donate some.
There you go. But I think we'll be in just fine shape with that. I forwarded you an email, I'm sorry, what?
I'm just gonna, did you say sorry, hon? Is that what you said?
Sorry, what?
Oh. I just thought about it. What's going on with Northern Bank? Have we heard anything from them?
I have not.
So they're not on our agenda, our radar screen
No.
for right now, no?
I was imagining that they were waiting to see how
Sal's
the,
goes.
right, how the proposal for that
Okay.
goes.
Okay.
It's-
Just, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
I had forwarded you the email from Alicia asking for input on the ARPA funding proposal. So if there are any board comments or board member comments, either I'll take those or feel free to give those directly to Alicia, whichever direction you prefer on that. I think I told you this before, in the budget that's going to town meeting, the assistant town planner position did not get funded or recommended. And then got notice today that the Eagle Independent, which is our local newspaper, is no longer going to be doing a print edition after the week of May 1st. So all public hearing notices will have to be in the Lowell Sun, which is more than 2 times as expensive. I'm going to double check some of the wording and try to condense those.
Why don't we just get the applicants to pay it?
They do,
right,
but, I mean, for the bigger developers, it's not an issue, but every once in a while, you need a hearing notice for something that's
So does it have to
fairly
be
minor.
in a written paper? It can't be online? It has to be a hard copy?
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
Welcome to-
And
2022.
exactly, and
Facebook count?
it's, it's an issue for, well, there's 3 different legislations. There's the zoning, the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals. There's, Conservation Commission has different legislation, and there's Board of Health has different legislation, and even procurement, they're under different legislation. All of those require print media, and so we think it's going to have to be a legislative solution. So a lot of the local papers have been doing the same thing
Yeah.
over the last several months, and so it's coming to a head.
Yeah, I mean, paper costs have gotten so outrageous.
Well, and
Everything has.
is that really broader outreach if you have something printed in a paper? Today, is it really? So,
Okay. Anything else? Are we,
Well, I actually just had a quick question. Looking at the ARPA dollars that Alicia sent over and Maren asked about. So it's 2 million to the sewer project, 1 million to the senior center project. And so I was just curious, where within the process of 550 King Street does the sewer system come into play?
as far as,
Timing.
Yes.
okay, my presumption is that
Is that you?
negotiation or that discussion is between the sewer department and the developer. Is that's,
I think they're already committed to $6 million that,
Right.
with the sewer department.
Well,
But it's more of the actual, they can't have people move in until there's a sewer system,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
system, so.
And what's the town looking at? 2 years to get the sewer up and running? Well, we'll know better.
I was gonna say, yeah,
have
the
them-
May meeting is going to be very busy. We'll have a new application, I'm assuming we'll have the continued hearing for 550 King Street. We'll have a new application for a warehouse-type building at 1 Monarch Drive. And we'll have the
What's
application.
going in there?
They're not sure of the use yet, which is gonna make for a little bit of a difficult traffic study. But they want to apply on spec and see what happens. But I guess that's what the 151 Taylor Street ended up doing too. They got permission and then had to come back and re-permit for the
Remember they
Amazon
approved them
last
for,
month.
they were gonna knock the building, and then they came back for
Yeah.
Amazon, so we got them twice.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. So we'll have that, and then we'll have the application for 242 King Street, the wastewater treatment facility there. They need special permit and site plan. So we will have the opportunity to meet with the sewer department and get some of that.
What's going on with, Hager? Do we have any update on that?
Actually, construction's going well. One hiccup they found was that the existing foundation under the federal house was in worse condition than they had,
Oh, of course.
they had
Okay.
hoped.
They're tying into the sewer, right?
Right, they have a sewer service agreement in hand.
Did we get any mitigation from that, given the fact that they're not gonna spend 300,000 or whatever it was to build a sewage treatment plant? I could have been,
Really, the cost to tie in is gonna be pretty similar,
really?
really.
You're gonna charge them that much to tie into it?
Well, between, well, water service and sewer services.
So are they going to tie into the existing system?
Well, it goes right across the front of it, yeah.
Well, yeah, because the new one won't be ready, you know, before the, by
Oh,
the time.
yeah.
these
Right, there is a
buildings are
sewer service agreement, and I don't know the details of it. It's
I was just
outside of.
See if we could get more
jurisdiction.
affordability out of them than the fact that they don't have to, well, you're saying if it all gets eaten up by them. Anyway, okay. All right, I think we're good. I'll entertain a motion to close the meeting, to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Wall, see you guys.